It is exactly 8:36 a.m. This is News and Views on Salam Media. My name is Julie Ali. Thank you for joining us. We do hope you will keep us company right up until 10 o'clock. Now, Mark Heywood is a journalist at Daily Maverick, and he's filed a report. I'm going to read the first paragraph of that report, and then we'll go straight into the interview. And I quote, last week, an article by Maverick citizen journalist Estelle Ellis reported that 7 children in the Butterworth area in the Eastern Cape had died of severe acute malnutrition since January 2022, and 6 others had to be admitted to hospital. Ellis reported that another 8 children were fighting for their lives in a Lusikisiki hospital, and we now have reason to fear the problem may be much more widespread. Uh, but by but with the world distracted by war and the ridiculous antics of Will Smith at the Oscars, who is going to pay much attention to a story like this? Well, I can tell you, Mark, that we here at Salam Media are truly concerned about the situation. A very good morning. Welcome to the program, and thank you for filing that story.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for your concern, because it is true. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Because it is truly a horrific story. You know, the idea that infants, these are very young children, mostly under the age of 3, are dying of starvation in our country should shock us all. And I'm afraid that, that what I reported 2 days ago is just the tip of the iceberg. This morning, we're carrying another report from Nelson Mandela Bay in the Eastern Cape, reporting, I think, the deaths of 12 children or 15 children, also from severe acute malnutrition. And my inquiries to pediatricians around the country are all indicating that the problem may be more widespread. And I should also say that, what is most shocking, of course, is when children die. But side by side with that is an increase in malnutrition across children, meaning that up to 25% of our kids, 25%, are stunted as a result of not getting sufficient nutrition. And I think what we have to understand is, apart from having empathy with the pain these children are experiencing, because they feel the pain of hunger on every day, is that malnutrition disadvantages a child for life. It slows down their development, their intellectual capacity, their physical capacity, and therefore it becomes a condition that endures through their whole lives. And these are reasons why I think we as society should be doing something about this.
Absolutely. And obviously, you were in discussion with a pediatric gastroenterologist at Rahima Musa Mother and Child Hospital. Are they seeing more such cases, or are these cases in the rural areas and they just go unnoticed and unreported?
Well, yes, I have been speaking to gastroenterologist at Rahima Musa. Again, it's hard to believe, but even in the inner city of Johannesburg, we have, over the last few years, been seeing cases of severe acute malnutrition in children, a small number of cases. But what the pediatricians tell me is that it's very hard for them to know how big the problem is, because there are no surveillance systems, simple systems that would allow community outreach, that measure the risks, for example, of children, would tell you where this problem exists, are not being undertaken. So they don't actually know. And I believe that there are a lot of people who do not access healthcare systems because they can't afford to get to a hospital. The transport costs are too great. They can't sit in a hospital queue all day to get their child seen. So the answer is yes, they think it is increasing. How much, they don't know.
Okay, so what you also say in your article that it's illegal for children to starve or even to be malnourished in South Africa. And earlier on in the show, at the introduction of my show this morning, I was just kind of reflecting on the state of affairs, not only in South Africa, but all around the world regarding poverty, regarding these type of issues, malnourished children, and entire communities and countries being under siege due to conflict and a whole host of other issues. And here we say that I think that if we, under the right conditions, this would be a flourishing country with the most amazing people. But we know what the reasons are. We know it's corrupt politicians, it's state capture, it's greed, it's power hungry. We know all of those issues. And yet we have the best constitution in the world. Where and how do we move forward knowing that it's illegal for children to starve or even to be malnourished in South Africa?
Well, look, I think you've said it all. I refer to the Constitution. The Constitution, remember, is our supreme law. There's no law higher than it. There's no politician higher than it. Constitution says that children in South Africa have a right to sufficient nutrition. And it doesn't qualify that. It doesn't, depending on whether the government has available resources or that this is something that must be achieved over many years. It says that every child today, as you and I are talking, should have sufficient nutrition. And yet we know that about 10 million children don't. And so that is an unlawful state of affairs. And it exists really because of negligence. Because we are not a country at war. We are not a country in a famine. There is no reason for this hunger other than maladministration. In fact, we are a country that throws away about 1/3 of our food, ends up in landfills. And we're a country where government could act to ensure that every child has the food that they need. Let me give you an example that I cite, which is government. One of the problems is that parents can't afford basic nutrition for their children. And that is linked to the fact that there is high food inflation, that essential foodstuffs are too expensive. Again, not because they cost a lot to produce, but because companies like Pick n Pay and Woolworths and Checkers and so on are making huge profits out of basic foodstuffs. Government could intervene in the food market to say that essential foodstuffs should not be above a certain price. They could look at what it actually costs to produce food and then say, well, this is a reasonable profit that you can make on this. But they don't do that. They just leave these companies to do what they want to do, and the cost is children dying. That's something government could do with business. Itself, they have been called by activists, for basic income grants, because many of these kids are children of people who are unemployed, of economically active age, but unemployed, and therefore unable to provide for children. So there are multiple ways in which we could address this crisis and in which we should address this crisis. But I guess what underlies me writing an article like this and our investigation and research is that unless people, ordinary people like your listeners, see this as an issue and start to protest about it, complain about it, write to MPs about it, whatever, then it will continue to lie under the surface of our society. A huge amount of misery, a huge amount of pain, something that is not about the today, but is about the future, because these children, the ones that don't die, will live with disadvantage throughout their lives.
Absolutely, Mark. I'm just kind of wondering, interacting with you this morning on this type of a story, is it's fine for you and I to talk about it, put it out there for everybody, but is the fear is that is anyone listening? Anybody who has the will to be able to do something about it? And then on the other hand, I'm also aware of the fact that we have very many aid organizations in the country, local and international. Um, and they are doing so much of, upliftment work in the country and beyond our borders. And yet we sit with this problem. So there's something really seriously wrong with the system for this to be
Yeah,
continued.
that's right. I mean, our society is blessed with many great civil society organizations, charities like Gift of the Givers. You know, the Gift of the Givers goes wherever there's need, and I'm sure it won't be long before we hear of Gift of the Givers doing something in relation to this particular crisis. But, you know, as you say, this is a system crisis. So a Gift of the Givers may come in for a few weeks when something is exposed and provide enormous help over a short period. But then, you know, the charities go away and so on, and people are left back in the same helpless situation that they were before, which is why we need the system changes. A charity can't reach all of the people who need it. It's enormously important, and I'd encourage everybody to support charities, to support food kitchens, to support Gift of the Givers, etc. But there's a need for a deeper fix as well.
Absolutely. And believe you me when I say it, Mark, in our community, the Muslim community in South Africa, it's not only Gift of the Givers that's on the ground. We have very many more such organizations, and they are doing absolutely sterling work. But obviously, that much more needs to be done. And as you say, the government needs to play its part. And I think it's now time for civil society to make their voices heard on this matter. But thank you for filing a very, very important and relevant story in our country. And hopefully, you and I will talk again sometime in the future.
I look forward to it, and thank you for the time. And as you've said, for your listeners, this is really an issue that we have to pay attention to. And I hope that people will find ways to help the organizations that you have referred to that are trying to address this in our community. So thank you very much.
My pleasure, Natalia. Nice talking to you. Go well till the next time. That was Mark Heywood. He's a journalist at the Daily Maverick. The time is 8:49 a.m.